further from the truth. You cannot have a war against a people that you yourself are occupying militarily. And that's precisely what we see happening. So Israel is the occupying, colonizing force that is subjugating 5 million Palestinians under the boot of its authorities. You have 3 million people in the West Bank that are denied basic human rights, living under a fascist military dictatorship. And in Gaza, there's 2 million Palestinians living under a medieval siege that is occupied completely militarily by the outside. Israeli authorities control every aspect of Palestinian life, no matter what area they are living in. You cannot have a war against an armed resistance group that does not have the same military capabilities. Israel is one of the most powerful militaries on the planet. It's armed to the teeth with U.S. weaponry. And, it has an air force. It has an armada of land vehicles. Hamas does not have any of that. Hamas has rudimentary weapons that it uses against this heavily fortified military force. So there is no equality when it comes to this so-called war. It is essentially just confining millions of Palestinians in an open-air prison and relentlessly bombing them, as well as having starvation take root because Israel allows what goes in and out of the Gaza Strip. So they're purposefully and intentionally starving millions of Palestinians, denying them the mobility to actually leave the Strip, and then indiscriminately bombing them. So a lot of genocidal acts on top of each other, and Israel absolutely needs to be stopped.
So in one sentence, how can you defend yourself on occupied land, right? Well, on that, according to UNGA Resolution 3070 of 1973, I quote, reaffirms the legitimacy of people's struggle for liberation from colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation by all available means, including armed struggle, end of quote. So if that is legit and resolution, this armed struggle in the context is obviously distinguished from acts of terrorism. Right? Because a lot of my Western friends, they support Israel. They believe securitization is the best way to legitimize what Israel is doing in Palestine because they believe Hamas symbolizes terrorism and whatever method used on terrorism can be justified.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions about what is going on. I think a lot of people don't realize that for decades, Palestinians have tried to mobilize peaceful, nonviolent resistance. And I think that we can look at the period of 2017, 2018 of the Great March of Return, where thousands of Palestinians within Gaza went to peacefully protest with nothing except Palestinian flags that were raised at this fortified border fence, where Israeli soldiers have authorized themselves to shoot to kill if people stray too close to the fence. What happened over several months was that Israeli snipers were perched up on top of sand dunes and they just picked off Palestinians over and over again as if it was target practice. They shot dead with sniper rifles children, medics, journalists, marked press very clearly, disabled people in wheelchairs. All of these people posed no threat to Israeli soldiers whatsoever, but they were simply massacred just the same, very methodically so. I mean, we're talking about picking people off one by one as if it's a turkey shoot. So basically what the West and what people who defend Israel in this case want is Palestinians to die peacefully and quietly. So, we can look at October 7th through a historical lens and realize that inevitably violence will erupt in unfortunate ways if people are denied basic human rights. So, I do not condemn the armed resistance that's actually fighting against genocidal onslaught right now and keeping Palestinians alive. I can understand historically why things happen and why October 7th happened. And that's because Palestinians have tried every avenue possible to peacefully resist and to peacefully declare that they need human rights. And they've been ignored on the international stage for decades.
And we see great endeavor trying to prevent the great public all over the world from knowing what's actually happening. We live in a world right now that whomever trying to describe objectively what's happening in Gaza, being labeled in all kinds of Nazi figures like Wehrmacht, like Gestapo, depending on how their description could critically damage Zionism or their implementation for further war crime. So if I quote ICJ Irish lawyer Benny Ni Hawley said, its people, means Gaza people, are witnessing daily threats to their very existence while the world watches on. To me, it seems like the world does not want to just watch on, but those reporting, those helping people to know what's actually happened, reporters, cooks, medical suppliers, doctors, MSF, WCK, and UNRWA, they sacrificed most workers in recent years. Even they are killing reporters. We don't see news agencies most strongly condemning IDF, but instead they're trying to promote still anti-human atrocities as anti-terrorism or spread of democracy. I think it's extraordinary to me, but frankly, I use extraordinary just because it's beyond my English vocabulary limit. But as a content creator, I believe a lot of your content got banned from YouTube or other content platform. So where do you see the way out? The voice can be heard by the great public.
Yeah, I mean, Israel has relied for decades on weaponizing the notion of anti-Semitism and conflating criticism of Israel with the notion that you're anti-Semitic if you dare to criticize